there's opportunities where we can leverage, ways of thinking, ways of understanding numbers in order to kind of swing outcomes, right? So this is where maybe we have a little bit more control, but you still have to be pragmatic about it. You still have to realize if we're proposing this new way, on average, I forecast that we'll achieve a higher level of profitability. It's like, well, it doesn't necessarily always work out that way. You actually still have to take and make changes. You still have to take risks, place bets, do things in a coherent way that is aligned with a strategy in order to get that all to work out. And that's what we see here with Billy Beane. At first, he buys into the theory from Pete. And his idea is just like, yeah, if we just do this, then it'll work, right? Like this new thing, it's great. And the maths. So we should do it. And I've definitely been a part of things like this before, Brian,
exactly,
where
yes.
It's like the maths, and we should just do it. And so we go and build a machine learning model that does it. And crap, it doesn't actually work within the current organization. Like we needed at some point earlier on, ideally, to change the strategy. We needed to influence people in a certain way to change the way that they're thinking and operating before we just brought them this new math and said this was a solution for them.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good way to say it, is that you have these wonderful techniques out of game theory, right? You have this, like, what was you were talking in the pre-show, like the asymmetric upside. You have the idea that I can do something where, like, the way I'm looking at the world, I see this benefit that nobody else sees, and my risk is much lower than my potential benefit, right? And if I play enough of those non-obvious moves, then I start to accumulate, in this case, I have more chances of people getting on base, which at the end of the day is what I want in baseball. So this asymmetric upside is something you're looking for. The other term we talked about was arbitrage, right? Like the idea that people are undervaluing assets, and so you can, or they're misvaluing assets, and so you can get more than you should for something that you already have, and you can pay less than you should for something that you want.
So let's talk about the mountaintop moment, Brian, because the mountaintop moment is an example of those two things basically being combined, and it's a fun moment. It's one of the more fun moments in the movie. On WonderTour, the mountaintop moment is where we can kind of see the theme playing out in an individual moment and learn a lesson. And the moment here has got to be the trade for Rincón,
who is a relief pitcher that they really want to finish out the season, as I recall.
Yeah, they need a closer, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming it doesn't say that, but I'm guessing they need a closer, and Rincón is the closer. I vaguely remember Rincón.
Yeah.
As I do with most of these players.
Yep. Yeah, and so the setup, I'll set it up. You can bring us in here. The setup of this is Billy Beane and Pete, his statistics advisor, in a room together with multiple telephones, right? And they have a goal. They want to get this player traded from another team, and they have a couple of assets that they're willing to shuffle around on their own team. But the other team is balking. They're like, oh, well, I've got somebody else that I think is going to give me a better offer, right? So you've got, like, the traditional way to solve this problem is to escalate. Well, I'll give you more money. Okay, well, I'll give you these 3 players. I'll give you these 2 players plus a bigger pile of money, right? But that's not what Billy Beane does. So what does he do here?
In this situation, he realizes an opportunity to capitalize on asymmetric upside of getting Rincón. So basically, if you think about it this way, there's 2 sides to any curve, right? There's like a downside end of the curve where at the far end, generally, it's less likely, but the downside is pretty significant. And there's an upside end of the curve where it's less likely, but the upside is pretty significant. And the assumption is that everything is a normal distribution and that it's always kind of fair on either end, depending on how far out you want to take a risk. That's how much benefit that you'll get. What we see here is the opportunity to play arbitrage on both ends of the curve. So what happens is Billy Beane has this opportunity. He's told us since the beginning of the movie he wants Rincón. He already went to the Cleveland team and tried to get Rincón in like the second scene in the movie.
Right.
This time he calls them and he makes an offer for him, and it's a pretty fair offer. But Cleveland's like, well, actually, we have another suitor. And I don't even remember who the other suitor is, but they have another suitor, and the response that Beane has is brilliant because he's like, well, he's a Rincón on our team, given our situation. This is really important for us. We could potentially stand to benefit a lot from him if things work out really well. On the flip side, though, now he has information. He has information that this other team is also looking for a relief pitcher. And so he is like, well, if we're getting Rincón, then we could just get rid of a mediocre relief pitcher that we have, and and we could get rid of him really, really cheap. And so he flips it and he calls the other team and he's like, well, I hear you're in the market, and we have a guy that we just got to get rid of. And they can't even hardly believe it. They're like, why would you just want to get rid of him? And so to this other team, he's giving them a low end outcome bet, basically, right? Like, it might be middle of the curve, actually, but it's probably a middle of the curve bet, right? Decent reward, decent.
They don't have to pay much
investment.
for it. So like it's a low risk thing. Great. Sign me up.
Exactly. He sells them on the low risk, but the problem with the low risk is it's not a very efficient bet because you're not necessarily going to get much out of it. What do you get if you win is the classic question when you're talking about asymmetric upside. And on the opposite side, what do you get if you win? If you get Rincón, who ends up being a great closer and leads you into the playoffs, is huge. And so he's willing to play this game where he sacrifices an asset that he has and he takes a beating on it, basically. Like when he sells it, he's like, all right, I'll take a loss on this. And on the other side, he even pays a premium, right? Out of his own pocket, he has to pay $250K in order to bring in Rincón. But he's making a bet. He's saying, if this team that we have is in fact good, which I think it is, it has a chance to play into the playoffs. We need somebody who can close these games out in a way that we don't currently have. And if that guy's good, then not only can I play him this season, but I'm actually going to make a deal with the owner that I can sell him next season and I'll take a profit on his contract because I'm the one paying the $250K.
So yeah, so it's wonderful. Like it's a fun scene to watch, right? But it's all asymmetric information. Like he's working the phones with like 3 different parties, and none of them sees the full picture except him. And so he's able to sort of manipulate them into doing the thing that he wants, which is like, you're going to take this player, so you don't need this pitcher anymore. So you're not going to ask him for anything. So you're going to be willing to sell to me at a lower price, and I'm going to get the money from this other place. And yeah, it's very skillfully played, and it's all telephone. Like there's no other humans in the room. He's not talking to any of these players. He's not, it's just moving the chess pieces around on the board. But it's done with this game theory mindset where he's looking at the world in a different way. He's looking at his strategy in a different way, and he's not just trying to win one trade at a time. He's trying to win the whole arrangement of pieces on the board.
Exactly. And that is the key. So that's where this is different than Pete just modeling out, basically running a simulation for how many runs they're going to score, depending on what their on base percentage is, blah, blah, blah. This is different because he's actually taking a loss on potentially both of these trades that he's making. Definitely taking a loss on selling the guy cheap, potentially taking a loss on taking a higher risk investment into Rincón, which could pay off or could not. But that, like you said, Brian, that's the key. There's an intrinsic benefit. And this is a much, much more applicable thing to our daily lives and our businesses because, like we said, you don't always end up being the company that comes up with sabermetrics and changes the world. But you do know your own strategy. You know the context of your own business. Right? We know that better than anybody else knows that. And
Right.
so we can take advantage of intrinsic benefits. In this situation, we're defining intrinsic benefit as the ability to gain additional outcome, basically, whatever you want to quantify the outcome as, win percentage, whatever, right? Through the overall, through the strategy, not just through an individual transaction. So he makes a good deal with Cleveland. He makes a good deal with the other team for both of those teams. But the A's actually win because between the two of them, it pushes them further towards the completion of or fulfillment of their strategy in a way that each of the individual moves would not have.
Right. And I think that's really where we need to land this, right? Is that in the unfair game, like the first step is recognizing that it's unfair. The second step is taking a different approach that everybody else has, like unlocking some blind spot, unlocking some unique insight that you have. But then what you just said is super important is that one step at a time, one move at a time, one advantage at a time is never going to add up to like winning the World Series, right? It has to be a coherent picture of like the whole organization is designed and executed top down to attack that strategy, to take advantage of those asymmetries. And you have to keep that picture in mind every time you're making a move. You have to keep that picture in mind with your management techniques. And that's very different. That's where you go from game theory to game practice. Right. And so I think what we're going to talk about next in our next episode is going to be what are Billy Beane's leadership superpowers? What are the techniques that he uses to actually take that theory and put it into practice? Like, how do you get this done on the ground? And how is that different than just the theory?